Knowing that you love the Earth changes you, activates you to defend and protect and celebrate. But when you feel the Earth loves you in return, that feeling transforms the relationship from a one-way street into a sacred bond. This is really why I made my daughters learn to garden, so they would always have a mother to love them, long after I'm gone.
Months ago, this looked so parched. It was so terrible. These swallows were so thin. It was like you could hear them scream. It was terrible. I really did not enjoy living here at that time, just because nature was looking so terribly parched. It was painful. In psychology or in the literature, you see a term that's called Solastalgia, which talks about the sadness that results from seeing one's natural environment deteriorate or maybe just change, and not feeling at home anymore in that environment, feeling absolutely helpless about it. If the swallows here around us perish and vanish, there's very little we feel we can do about that. So that can indeed lead to intense feelings of grief and sadness. I have been teaching marketing classes, consumer behavior classes all my professional life. And it's just doing a systematic analysis of these textbooks and just seeing that there's really nothing in there about climate change. No critical assessment of the role of marketing, production, all that, and overconsumption. There's zero linkage in there. You're left to wonder, so how are students who come with a critical mindset, and they come to the classroom and they read this, and now they're left to make sense of that? That can be, a lost opportunity. It requires change that is very profound and needs to start early on in consumer socialization, how we grow up, how we talk about these issues, how we can address materialism and build a consumption culture that does not necessarily require greenhouse gas emissions to the extent that it does now. I have got more involved in that field of climate anxiety, mainly because of teaching about sustainable consumption and retailing, because I note in my students there is a general sense of anxiety, and that made me sad, and that made me think more about what mental health effects climate change is going to bring with us, pretty much for everybody. And then on top of all of that, I had a child, and that really got me to wonder what will happen in his life.
Yeah.
If you think about young children's education, you cannot worry them too much. You will imprint them with thoughts that they should not have. On the other hand, you have to start early on to enable them to make changes in life that will really have an impact. And so it's a bit being torn between those two. And then so I just step back and I'm like, I'm just a parent in that case. I don't have to, others need to figure out how to educate young children, but I'm very, very happy when I see that that's actually done in schools and meanwhile even in preschools, in a very careful manner.
It's just sensory adaptation at first, it's the same.
We conducted interviews and we have done some research into the question of how the fear of climate change may affect people's decision to have or not have children. And we spoke to a number of young people who were very, very torn about this issue. And so it was very interesting to learn these different kinds of perspectives. Not having children is a decision which has a huge impact on the climate, of course, but it is not a viable solution to any kind of climate change mitigation, because that's in the environment or in the societies we live in, it's not likely to be something that can be prescribed. It's not aligned with so many things that hold together our society here. We look at that phenomenon again more from a mental health perspective, because if climate change worries me so much that even when thinking about these most personal and for most people probably positive and cherished kind of decisions that I can make in my life, if climate change even enters that tells me a lot about the profundity and the impact that climate change has on our psyche today. So in our research, we have been looking at different forms of psychological coping with these ecological stressors that we perceive. And they range. They range from forms which we sometimes call maladaptive. They just help us to not have to constantly mentally deal with it. Forms such as denial of one's own role in all of that. It's a coping mechanism. It works well psychologically to remove some of the stress, but the stressor remains. We are still confronted with news about climate change. And then there are those which we would say are proactive ways of coping. Getting more information, actually engaging in behaviors that try to reduce the effects of climate change. And we generally know that people who feel empowered and committed to do something have positive mental health outcomes. We are embedded in systems. I mean, everything is interrelated, right? Just trying to figure out cause and effect can be very difficult in this context. There is this interlinkage between what's happening in the environment, what's happening in social interaction, aggression, and so forth, what's happening in mental health. And there's this phenomenon of psychological distance, right? So it's going to happen, but it's going to happen in the future. This place is going to look like Death Valley, right, at some point. But will I really be around to experience that? Or it's happening in places of the world that are so far away from what my lived experience is that I can't commit to change my own behavior. So we need to navigate that space as somebody who's consciously making an effort. But if we blow this up into this ideological realm, it's much more difficult to go and find our way into that jungle and do something about it.